All right, everybody. Hello and welcome to the Multifamily More Virtual Mastermind. I'm your host, Jamie Gruber, along with my hairy co-host, Mr. Benoit Malige. What's going on, Ben?
I'm not that hairy, but I'm fine.
You're pretty hairy comparatively. I do like that you are you doing this thing now where you start to like make our guests feel comfortable by going with the same do or similar do? Is that what's happening?
I guess you could say so, yeah.
We got to get like a really long-haired person, like a woman, like Anna Ariama, I'm Kelly back on or something like that, and see if you bring it.
All right, let's do that.
All right. Well, tonight's guest is I'm going to say it. I think probably the most interesting guest we've had, just from a standpoint of such a renaissance man, a multifaceted individual. It's crazy to think about all that he's done. So our guest, Barri Griffiths, has been in the WWE as a wrestler at the pinnacle of wrestling. He also now appears on the Cirque du Soleil show Ka at the MGM in Las Vegas, which I've been to. He's a lead archer. From the WWE, you may remember him as Mason Ryan. He's had matches with all of them. You can see pictures of him with guys like John Cena and Kane and all these other guys that were really, really big names in the WWE. So he's one of the fraternity of wrestlers out there. And now, amidst all of that, he decided, why not get into real estate investing? So excited to have you, Barri. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, man. And I don't know if I can live up to that intro, man. That's a lot of pressure you put on me under there.
No pressure.
We got one person saying Barri is awesome. Love chatting with him. So guys, look, do me this favor. At the bottom of your chat box, make sure you open it. If you go to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a chat button. Open that up. Drop in where it says to and change it to from panelists to everyone. And just let us know where you're coming in from. Say hi to Barri. Let us know you're out there. Drop some chats in there. And if you have any questions tonight, drop them in there and we will grab them as we go. And we'll make sure Barri answers each and every one of them. So tonight's broadcast is brought to you by the Multifamily More YouTube channel. Check us out. www.youtube.com/multifamilymore. Subscribe. Hit the notification button, like this video and many others that you'll see on there. We appreciate the support and we hope we keep you up to speed with all the content that's out there. So Barri, welcome.
Thanks, man. I think I got band beat. You called me a hairy guest, but I would hate to show you my back right now. So yeah, I don't have to wear Lycra pants and be in a ring in front of 20,000 people anymore. So I kind of let that hairiness go. Before there was a weekly shaving procedure and tanning procedure, but that's gone out the window a while back.
Gave that up too, the performance in the Lycra pants. That's me. Yeah. Ben, take us away, brother.
Yeah, no, sure. So really happy to have you on the show, Barri. Like Jamie mentioned, you have a pretty regular, boring story. That's probably why we have you on the show. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background and you kind of start things off like that.
Yeah. Well, let me start way back. I'm originally from Wales in the UK, tiny little town. And when I say small town to people here, I don't think they realize how small it is. You say a small town here, and they say, "Oh, yeah, I'm from a small town too." "Oh, how many people live there?" "Oh, about 20,000." I'm like, there was 200 people that lived in my town. 200 people. There was a fish and chip shop. There was a post office. There was a small grocery store. There was my dad's business, which was a construction business and undertaking business. And then there was 3 pubs. Yes, 3 pubs. So it tells you a lot about where I grew up, because the pubs were the heartbeat of the town. It was where the community met and everyone goes for a pint. And when my wife went there for the first time, she's like, "Why is everyone an alcoholic where you live?" I was like, "No, they just go for a beer every night. It doesn't make you an alcoholic." So anyway, tiny little town. Grew up there, most of my life. Kind of knew that I wanted more for some reason. I don't know why. I always remember that I always wanted something different, more. And there's nothing wrong with where I live. I have great friends, great people, beautiful countryside, rolling hillside. But I always knew that I wanted more. And I don't know why. I'm not really too sure why, but I always wanted more from life than that area could offer me, I think, So was soccer mad growing up, played all kinds of sports growing up, but mainly soccer. And I blew out my knee one year. So blew out my knee and then started lifting weights. And, I took to weights pretty well. It was just, always had that dedication and ability to kind of apply myself to stuff. started building physique for myself, got a pretty good physique, and I was training 7 days a week, wasn't drinking on the weekends, as hard as that was and as crazy as that was from where I'm from, because everyone drinks, and you don't drink, you're a bit of an oddball. They don't understand it, but I wasn't, and I just loved training and going to the gym and being in shape and stuff. And I was like, I'm spending all this time and dedication creating this physique and doing all this stuff, and I love it. I really enjoy it. So why not try and do something with it? But what can I do with it? I never had an interest in bodybuilding, no interest whatsoever. I admire bodybuilders and I followed it for whatnot, but I never had an interest in doing that. So I was watching TV one day, and I think wrestling came on, and I saw these huge jacked guys, and I was like being athletic, and I was like, wow, okay, maybe I can do that. So I started kind of looking into it and trying to find it. But this was in 2006, around 2006, maybe even slightly before that. The internet wasn't as prevalent. You didn't have access to everyone and information like you have now, right? And it's not like I'm going back that far back, but it wasn't easy to go, hey, I'm going to be a wrestler. Let me Google how to be a wrestler, pull up a wrestling school, or contact people. That wasn't the case, right? There was mobile phones and stuff, but it wasn't that easy. So just through luck, a small wrestling show was coming through my town, my small little town. They were having a wrestling show, but it was nothing like you imagine. It was on a soccer field on a cold Tuesday, wet, rainy night, and it was in a tent that they had a chandelier as the lighting, and it was it was pretty cool, but it wasn't what you think with wrestling when you think about WWE and you think of all that. So I went to the show under the premises of trying to meet someone there and get my wrestling career started. But I took my godson at the time, saying, hey, let's take him to wrestling. He'll love wrestling, because also that was another thing. Where I'm from, and tell me if I'm going too long with this, where I'm from, wrestling doesn't have the same respect as it does in the US, right? It's seen as, just some guys pretending to fight in the ring. It's not seen as entertainment. It's not seen as glamorous. It's not seen as cool. It's just kind of almost seen as looked down upon, frowned upon almost a little bit. So that was at the time. So I didn't want to be like, hey, I didn't tell anyone. I had this idea in my head, but I didn't really tell them. So we went to the show, met the promoter. The promoter was amazing. One of the most interesting, amazing. You guys say I'm interesting. You should have met this guy. He was just unbelievable. What an unbelievable character. And he was in his 70s at the time. So he'd been promoting wrestling for 50 years, struck it off with him. He started teaching me how to wrestle and the tricks and the trades and all this stuff. Wrestled for him all over the UK, all over Europe. We used to go to Ireland for 2 weeks every year. That was an amazing time. You'd had to get drunk every night. That was part of the deal. You had to get drunk every night and then get up the next morning, go to the gym and travel and do the next show. And that was an amazing time. And then through that, I sort of created a little bit of a reputation, got to know people. And WWE happened to be in the O2 Arena in London. And someone said, hey, why don't you come here and kind of meet the people and see if they're interested in having you and maybe signing you? And I went there. I was like, okay, let me go. This was a few years into my career. Went there, met one of the guys that signed the talent, and within 5 minutes he'd signed me up, and in 6 months I was on a flight to Tampa, Florida from my small little town. And as you can imagine, a small town boy, always kind of like I mentioned, wanting more, landing in Tampa, Florida, with the beaches and everything that goes along with that. I thought I was in heaven. I thought I died and went to heaven. So was in there, went to their training school for about a year, and then debuted on Monday Night Raw in January of 2011. And went, did some cool stuff there, did some pay-per-views, wrestled in some really cool arenas, like Boston Garden in Dublin, Boston Garden in TD Garden in Boston, sorry, Madison Square Garden, traveled the world, did a lot of cool stuff, which was amazing. And, it just happened in a blink of an eye. Finished with them, then got the gig with Cirque du Soleil, and in 2015, and then been with Cirque du Soleil ever since, which was just pure luck as well. That was just a lot of luck that got me in that gig. And yeah, like you said, I mentioned, I performed the show called Card, the MGM Grand casino in Las Vegas. And it's kind of where I am now in terms of that. And then along the way, I found real estate investing, because what I realized once my wrestling career kind of ended, or with WWE ended, like I didn't really have a plan B. The story behind that is I just bought a house. I bought a $430,000 home in January, and then in March of that year, or April of that year, they didn't renew my contract. So now I've got a $2,550 mortgage payment. I'm a wrestler, so as you can imagine, my skill set is kind of limited to the real world, and had to figure out where I was going to do with that. So I ended up renting up that house and fell into real estate and down that rabbit hole of real estate stuff. But at that time, I realized that, okay, I can't let this happen again. Because when I was with WWE, I didn't have a plan B. My plan B was to be the world heavyweight. Plan A was to be the world heavyweight champion. Plan B was to be the world heavyweight champion. Plan C was to be the world heavyweight champion. And I truly believed it. And I wasn't arrogant with it. And it wasn't overconfident, because I had a trajectory that kind of looked like it was going to go that way. And through some injuries and bad luck and whatever else that happened, it didn't come to fruition. But I always believed that. And that was good, because I had that focus and that determination and that work ethic towards that and that belief to doing it. But I didn't have a plan B. I didn't have anything that if anything did go wrong, because, you know, I'm in the entertainment industry, right? It's a very fickle business, right? It's, you know, it's very fragile. Things can fall apart very quickly. So I realized I needed to have a plan B and something else, right? Especially now these days that I have a wife and a kid, you know, I can't be gallivanting over the world trying to make stuff happen, right? So I found real estate, and I fell in love with real estate. And I think it comes back to my dad's construction business, which has been passed down from my great granddad. The business is probably over 100 years old now. They passed it down to my granddad, to my dad, and then it was, you know, supposed to be me technically, but here I am in the US doing all kinds. But I think that was ingrained in me. My granddad built like a threeplex. I remember being there when I was a kid doing that. And then my dad and my uncle built a similar type of thing, almost right next door to that. So I was never a fan of the construction business. I worked as a carpenter. I was probably the worst carpenter in the history of the world, because something I landed in. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And I was like, okay, let me just go work for my dad. And I really didn't have a passion for it, didn't have an enjoyment. But I think being around it all that time, I think I had an interest for it, as well as having that interest in it being a plan B. So is that the longest intro ever? Or
it was a lot.
Great.
It was great. I got a bunch of follow-ups, but I'll let Ben go. I got a bunch of stuff I want to dive into.
No, for sure. So yeah, we're going to get into real estate in just a second. I just wanted to mention something, because I heard you talk about getting lucky a few times, and I don't think that's luck, man. It's I don't know who says it, Gino or something. Luck is preparation that meets opportunity. It's like you had a plan, you knew what you wanted to do, you were dedicated, and you worked your ass off to get to where you wanted to be. So, you know, at this point, like for you to become a WWE wrestler and then later a performer on the Vegas Strip, this means that, you know, like you've reached the highest level of success twice, not once, but twice. So it's like you have to have, you know, a really strong mindset to overcome challenges. And you briefly mentioned challenges along the way and the bumps in the road. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I agree with you. Yeah, no, there was definitely luck, but that luck, I think I created a lot of that luck, right? Definitely, there's, you know, I'm sure there was other people that worked hard and kind of did similar things to me, but maybe didn't. And then maybe there's people that worked not as hard as me and got even luckier than I am, right? But I agree. I was in the right place at the right time a lot of times, but that I put myself in those places, right? Without that willingness to do what other people weren't willing to do, right? Like I mentioned, people back home, not to make this a long answer, but nobody else back home was willing to do what I was willing to do. Nobody else was willing to kind of have people were definitely sniggering kind of behind my back about wrestling and things like that. But I didn't care, because I had that focus and I had that dream, I guess, of being something else. I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't know it would take me to the US, but I had a dream of being more. But yeah, there was definitely a lot of challenges along the way. I can talk to that if you want, or if you have specific questions.
Well, I got a couple things here, because I think, you know, you've said a few things that are really important, I think, when it comes to the mindset it takes to achieve what you've achieved. And the parallel I want to make for everybody is, like Ben said, like, you know, you've achieved, I think when we spoke, I said, man, you've lived like 2 lifetimes worth of successful stories in one, and a short lifetime. You're a young guy still, right? But WWE wrestler, pinnacle of wrestling, Vegas Strip, pinnacle of entertainment, right? Like it's unbelievable what you've been able to achieve. And Ben mentioned about overcoming things, but one of those things I want to talk about real quick that I know haunts me is fear of judgment, imposter syndrome, people snickering behind your back, all that stuff you mentioned, and double it down with, it sounds like societally, I think that's a word, societally, where you're from, you know, wrestling is known as entertainment in the United States, but you're here because it's like, holy cow, this guy was a WWE wrestler, right? Like, that's impressive. Whereas, like you said, over there, it might be like, wrestling, really? Like, how do you, from a town of 200 people where everyone knows everybody, 3 pubs, everybody's drinking, having a good time, probably razzing you everywhere you go, you could feel them staring at you, feel them talking about you. How do you overcome that? Because I think in the real estate world, a lot of people say, I'm out of a job and I talk to that friend at work and say, yeah, I'm buying a property. I'm going to rent it out. They're like, oh, midnight toilet calls. And, you're dealing with tenants. And what if they sue you? And you can easily, you can easily get sucked back into like, oh, I'm not thinking of this right. I'm being judged. Can you get in on that? Like, why didn't you fear judgment? Why did you push through?
Firstly, I did fear judgment. I would be lying if I said I didn't. I would be lying if I said that it didn't bother me, that it didn't, because we all want to be liked and loved. And, even the people that says that they don't, right? We ultimately do. I don't know what it is about the human race that comes up, but it's true, right? It's hard not to die. And some of us care less than others, but we all ultimately care what people think to some degree. And
1,000%. You're right.
Yeah. I think I just wanted more for my life. I think, I keep saying that, and I guess I never really thought about it so much, but I keep saying it. So it's obviously important to me, right? And it's just, I don't know what brought that on. I don't know if it was, it wasn't that I was always the coolest kid growing up and I was the toughest.
Oh, I think he froze up a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, it was just getting good. Sorry, guys. We'll get him back on here. If I could do the accent, he's got a great accent. If I could do it, I would try to finish his answer for him, but it's not going to happen. We got a question out here too from Ryan that we'll get to, but let me just text him and let him know he froze up here real quick. Ben, you want to dance or anything? Like, can you maybe show off your flowing locks of hair? Just anything you're willing to do would be appreciated.
Drink some water.
I think it's really interesting though. Like, no, he'll come back on. He's texting me back, so he'll be back, guys. But I think it is interesting. To that point, because I don't know, maybe you guys could drop in comments. Like when you shared with somebody in your family or whatever, have you been ridiculed? I have ridiculed as a strong word, but have you had judgment passed on you? Because I know I have. So just a little hands up, or for sure, or not really. Maybe you haven't. Maybe it's not been something that people have judged you for, but it can be challenging to almost feel a little bit weird having a conversation with people sometimes, because that they're kind of looking at you sideways, or it feels like they are. And like he said, I probably asked the question the wrong way, Ben. It wasn't like, how did you not hear all of that? That's not the question. The question is, how did you hear all of that and say, I don't care, I'm going to keep going? And that's what he was starting to get into. So, interesting stuff. Back on the phone.
Oh, it's working great now.
He makes
Sorry, guys.
Nah, it's all right, man. I've had that happen. Can't tell you how many times.
Oh,
So you were starting to talk about, Barry, like you said it right. Like I was saying just in the little break there, like wrong question on my part. Of course you heard it. Of course you felt the judgment, but it was more like, how did you keep going to get past that? So you were kind of going down that path. So continue.
Yeah. And I think what it was for me was that I had that goal and that vision to want more for my life. I think, I was working for my dad, and, it wasn't the worst thing in the world, right? It was just, had this okay job that I didn't mind. And, just to give reference, right? I'm not from a poor area, but it's a small town, very rural. So I was making £150 a week, which is $225 a week. Yeah. 16, it wasn't a lot of money, and spend all that on the weekend or whatever it was. And it doesn't go very far. And it's just, I felt like there was more to life. I didn't necessarily know what that was. So, when I started training and started building the physique and seeing, I was getting a reaction a lot of places would go, because I was 6'6", 280 pounds, and lean, and whatever else, tanned, and I looked okay. So I realized that, okay, maybe there is something more. I can do something here. I have some control over my life. And the more I trained, and the more I sort of went down the wrestling path, and the more doors opened to me, and I could see that, the more I was excited by that. It just, that was stronger than the people sniggering and then the judgment, that want, I guess, it was stronger. And I think it comes back to your why. We hear the why, the word, the why. It's a 3-letter word, right? But what does that really mean? It means what do you want out of life? What is the most important thing to you in your life? And once you understand that and know what that looks like other stuff is kind of irrelevant to some extent, right? And I think that's what happened with me. That goal of achieving more with my life, and getting out of my current lifestyle at that time and being more. And I didn't know it would lead me to America, but I knew that I wanted something more from my life. And I think that was stronger than anyone's judgment, anyone's thoughts, anyone's snickering, anyone's negative comments, whatever it was. that was stronger than any of that, because if it wasn't, I would have, like you said, I would have stopped. I would have given up. I would have said, okay, I don't really like this feeling that I get from people. That's, okay, what is this going to take me? What is it going to achieve? Yeah, let me just stop. It's easier, right? And I think also I have, I don't also know where this comes from, but I've also had determination about me. I was always the kid running laps when nobody else was training. I was always early to training, last to leave. I could train all day, every day. I just loved it, and I think, that comes from somewhere, right? There was a work ethic or a drive or something from there. And that was always from a young age. That was something that I always got told, like, that I had a good work ethic for soccer and whatever else sports I played, that, I was a good team member in that aspect. So I think I always had that as well. So having that ability to put all those things together was able to propel me, and it was able to kind of take me out of the situation as well. And once I kind of started leaving and traveling more and whatever, it became a lot easier, because that wasn't around me so much, and it's just kind of, I think that kind of still drives me a little bit to this day, that that I don't know, people's opinions and stuff like that to some extent.
Yeah, listen, first of all, I want to empathize with you on the judgment, or not the judgment, but people being enamored by your physique. I feel you, man. 5'7", 160. I walk in a room and people are, whoa, look at how little he is. No, but I can see that. And actually, I think what you articulated just now is a little bit of like, listen to your inner voice. And that's what it sounds like you did. To your point, I love the way you put it. It was just more powerful than the judgment. Like, you felt the judgment, but this particular thing, you just had this calling toward it, this draw toward it, right? This thing that was like driving you there, and you just sort of leaned into it and kind of trust fell into whatever your intuition was, it sounds like, which is great advice, because I know many of us, me included, mute that voice, that inner voice, so much that, you don't take the chances that you might have. And at a certain point, I'm sure no one was laughing when you were, performing on Survivor Series and Royal Rumble and pay-per-view events and all this stuff. Everyone back home is probably like, look at this guy, he's amazing, all that he did. But it took you trusting that inner intuition. And on that point, I wanted to follow up on something else you mentioned. Like you said, you always had dedication and like an ability to apply discipline. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
Was that, you mentioned about in the weight room, soccer, was that only, and this is an honest question, because I hear this from successful people, that sometimes they are just like drive junkies. Like, it doesn't matter, like, walk on glass. Well, I'm going to be the best damn guy that ever walked on glass ever. Is that you? Do you have that naturally? Or is it more like when you align with whatever it is you're doing, man, you are all in? Which is it?
Yeah, I'm definitely not that. And when it comes to real estate, it's more challenging to me. So that, as you can imagine, the sports side of stuff, like going to a field and playing soccer for 5 hours, or going to the gym for an hour and a half and just being willing to put everything on the line, or go in a wrestling match for 30 minutes, right? That was not easy. It was still, you still have to, some days you don't feel like doing it and you have to challenge that. But that came a lot more naturally to me than the real estate world, where you have to underwrite deals and you have to send emails and you have to do a lot more techie stuff, I would say, as well, right? I wasn't the world's best student, to be honest with you. I have no degree. I went to college 2 separate years and didn't get past Christmas either year, to be honest with you. It was just that I tried. I thought that that's where I was supposed to go, but it just didn't work. And at the time, truth be told, I liked drinking too much and having a good time. That was I guess at that time that was stronger, than my calling to be a student. So that's a challenge. And when things are really hard, I find myself avoiding stuff sometimes, but ultimately I always go back and end up doing it. But just to be truthful, the real estate is a challenge for me in terms of those type of stuff. Now, going to a property and viewing it and talking to people and, walking the property or whatever, those type of stuff comes a lot easier to me, but it's still a challenge. So no, I'm not that person that, is that would a type or whatever. That's just, that's just going, I was more of a quiet kind of hustle, but more because I enjoyed it, I think, more than anything. Sure. So yeah, I don't want to give everyone the perception that, he's been successful because he was that person. No, there's plenty of days, and we can talk about that, where I just challenge myself, to kind of be able to do it. And I wanted to stay in bed, or I didn't want to eat that 8th or 9th meal of the day. You know what I mean? I didn't want to eat another tin of tuna. I didn't want to eat another dry chicken breast, and there's been plenty of challenges that, and again, just being completely honest, there's part of me, I think, that's naturally lazy, to be honest. You guys make me sound good, but there's parts of me that definitely naturally lazy, but you got to find ways to hack yourself, or you got to find ways to make stuff work. And, I think over the years, that's what I've been able to do.
Yeah, these are the secrets of the uber successful. Like, if anybody follows Ed Milet, he said almost the exact same thing that you just said. Like, I'm naturally a lazy person, and not quite the same thing, but essentially what you said, he has to hack his way out of that. Like, he has to find ways to kind of trick himself or motivate himself or drive himself or whatever. So I think that's a great takeaway for folks that are on this call, just, that mindset piece. And the last thing I wanted to touch on real quick was you talked about no plan B. And I wonder about this. So I'm going to use a guy like that, maybe is The Rock. Hyper successful dude. And when you listen to stories about his transition from wrestling into entertainment, into like movies and stuff, like, it was burn the boats. It sounded like the way you described it, like burn the boats, no plan B, whatever. But it worked. Now he's a shooting star, right? He's probably the rarity on that. But how do you balance between losing focus by having something else going on and being hyper vigilant against your goal? And maybe it's a better question to say, maybe you found real estate investing early on when you're making money, when you're just starting in the wrestling circuit, and you said, you know what, I can see this one day, it could all be over. Let me start stashing money away and investing in real estate. Do you think it would have changed the trajectory of your career at all? Would it have made you lose focus on it? Or did you need that all in, no plan B to achieve what you achieved?
I would say I could have done both to some extent. Right now, could I be flipping houses every weekend and, doing that kind of work, or, buying an apartment complex and fixing it all up myself and doing all the work? No, but could I have used that money I had? And I wasn't borrowing money. I wasn't spending my money like crazy or blowing it on stupid stuff or anything like that. I was luckily like that. I was always kind of frugal to some extent, but I could have invested in real estate, as we know with multifamily. And I'm not saying this because this is a multifamily show and I love multifamily and that's kind of work, but I could have invested passively, if I'd have known then and understood real estate and understood the idea of having a plan B. If every year we're talking, I got here in 2010, right? Maybe in 2011, I started investing passively and I was making good money at that time. What would that money be worth now, right? 9 or 10 years later, would have been worth a ton, would have been worth a lot. So, I think I could have done both, but I think, yes, to reach a certain level, you have to have not an all or nothing, but you have to be dedicated, right? You have to be, go to the gym every day, eating right, you have to be watching wrestling matches to get idea, working on your character, working on talking and promos and all that stuff, thinking about it. You can't be distracted too much, but, it's not like it's a 24-hour day. I could do an hour or two a day of calling people or doing stuff like that, right? There's stuff that you can do, but I think that is a very good point that, you need to be focused. And I think that can be comparable to busy professionals now, right? And again, I'm not saying this because this is a multifamily show. I'm not trying to sell multifamily.
Multifamily and more. And more.
Yeah, so, yeah. But it's but when I talk to people, I think, busy people, like, they don't need, if you're a dentist, doctor, lawyer, attorney, whatever it is, right? You don't want to be swinging a hammer on the weekend, right? For one, you worked all week, I don't know how many hours, right? 10 hours a day, probably doing, it's a lot of work, right? You get paid well for it, but at the same time, it's a lot of work and you're good at it. Focus on what you're good at. And then maybe on the sidelines, invest passively or find another way that is not so time intensive to do that. And that's kind of, if I went back, that's what I definitely would have done. I would have, probably invested passively in deals, and I'd probably be a millionaire by now. I don't know, the way multifamily's gone up, right, in the last decade or whatever.
How did you start your real estate investing career?
It was I became an accidental landlord. So in 2014 I bought a house. So I was making good money with the WWE, but okay, I'm going to buy a house. So it makes sense to buy a house. No, there was no investing behind it whatsoever. I liked the layout. I liked the way the house looked. It was an emotional buy, right? But I did buy on water, thinking that there's only a finite amount of water and it'll go up in value. That wasn't really such a good strategy in the end. But I bought it, and then when I had this $2,550 to $2,550 a month mortgage, when my contract wasn't renewed, I was like, okay, what do I do now? Okay, I can't. For one, my wrestling career finished, right? So it was not finished, but you know, the dream with WWE, and they're the only real team in town, right? You know, there's WWE, and then there's everyone else, right? That's where you really go to make it as a wrestler. So when that came to an end, it was rough. I would be lying to say if that was like one of the most testing times of my life, to be honest with you, because as you can imagine, I'd worked 10 years of my life or whatever at that time to get to that point and given it everything, and thought I was going to be the world champion, and then that came crashing down. So now I've got this house that I love. I love the house. It was an awesome house, but I've got this huge mortgage payment. I can't see myself or force myself to sell this house. I could have sold and just taken a loss, and I had, you know, I put a lot of money down at the time because I didn't have good credit or whatever. I didn't understand. It wasn't that I had bad credit. I was from the UK and I never understood building credit. So I put a lot of money down. So I would have got some money back and this and that, but I would have lost money on it. But more than anything, I would have lost the house.
Right.
And that symbolized more than the house to me. It was more than bricks and mortar. It was more than a building. It was more than a property. It was waking up every morning and looking out on this beautiful view, you know, and having this, you know, it was a 3,100 square foot house. You know, there was a feeling of achievement as well from having that house that I had. It was in a lovely community. They had a great pool area and everything there, and I just loved living there. So it was just too much to bear to sell that. So I scrambled and tried to find how I could keep this house and what did I need to do. So I felt, you know, rent it out, you know, and find someone to rent it. So I looked up how to rent, what you need to do, all that stuff, and then that, I think, started me down the rabbit hole. I don't know if I found bigger pockets or rich dad first, but I knew I eventually got to that point. And then once I realized that, I was like, wow, okay, this is a whole world that I had no idea about, and it's amazing. And I think, you know, I can create. And at that point, obviously, I got to the point where I realized I needed a plan B. So it was that first house that I bought as an owner that I ended up renting out and becoming an accidental landlord. That started it all for me.
So let's flash forward to today, and then we'll kind of work it back. We'll do a little Tarantino here, Quentin Tarantino, right? So today, I guess, do you own that house you own that house still, and what does your portfolio look like? And then let's kind of backtrack to how you set up the next deal and the next deal. So go for it.
Yeah, so I bought the house in 2014. Ended up renting it out for $2,300. So that was a negative cash flow, about $200 a month. But the guy that was moving in was going to put blinds in all the house, and there was about 20 windows that needed blinds. So it was about $8,000 worth. So I was actually ended up out on top, but it wasn't. I was negative $200 a month for a while. So then I moved to realize that real estate was awesome. Slowly but surely, went to Vegas. I was like, okay, let me buy here. Ended up buying 2 single-family homes here. And the goal, and you know, then you research real estate and you find, okay, what is your goal? Then you work back from there. So I figured out what my number was, you know, in terms of annual cash flow, and it was about $100,000. And I figured I'd need 40 single family homes at the time to achieve that, right? So, you know, 40 single family homes, my God, that's a lot of work. So I met with someone one day and they said, you know, you can buy 40 unit building and get there in one deal or whatever. You know, that's how multifamily works. You can economies of scale. So I ended up selling everything. So I sold in 2017. I sold that house in Florida. Bought it for $434. Sold it for $484. Okay. But between everything, I probably just broke even. Maybe, you know, I didn't lose money, but it's not the worst deal in the world, but definitely not the best. And then I bought a townhome for 173, put 10K in it, and then sold it for 234. So I made a bit of profit on that. And then my primary residence I bought for 230, and then I sold it for 307. So within 2 years, and I owned that for 2 years. So that's, you know, I made a good amount of money there. But then, But I was focused on multifamily. I knew that multifamily was where I needed to be and what I wanted to do. So I ended up, at the start of this year, I bought a 6-unit. I was looking for something much bigger, but I bought a 6-unit just outside of Cincinnati, area called Covington. But that's just like a turn. I see that more as a flip, to be honest with you. And I probably would have been out of it by now had it not been for COVID. But all the units, all 6 units, it was two triplexes that was bundled together, you know, made into one. But all the units needed renovation. They all needed a complete gut job almost to be renovated, and they all need different levels of work. But the idea was and still the idea is to renovate all the units, obviously increase the rents by a ton, and I can tell you the lot, and then sell that property in 1031 into something much bigger. So I bought that property for 300, and I'm hoping to sell it for maybe 650.
Wow.
I'm hoping maybe 650.
Yeah, but how much capex do you have how much are you putting into
Oh,
it?
I bought it for 300, and then I'm going to have to put about 100, 120 into it.
Wow.
So,
Still damn good.
Pretty good deal. Yeah. And that's, talk about luck again. That was some luck as well, but it was, again, that preparation meeting.
Opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Preparation meeting opportunity. That's the perfect way to explain it, because I'd met with a broker. I created a great relationship with a broker. I'd been to Cincinnati 4 or 5 different times, spoke with him on a bi-weekly basis, kept in touch with him all the time, knew his family's kid's name, his wife's name, all that kind of stuff, and kind of obviously proved to him that I was somewhat of a credible buyer. And he just called me out the blue one day, say, hey, my sister-in-law is getting ready to list this 6 unit as a residential property. Are you interested? You can get it for 300. I'm getting ready to sell a property down the street for 500. So even if you put 100 into it, you're still going to walk away with good. So that was that luck with it. I bought it. And just give you an idea about rents. Rents at the time were about 600, but there was some 525s and some 700s, but mostly 525s. I'm getting 1200 on 1250 on one of the units, 1150 on the other one. So it just gives you an idea of how much room there is to bump rent.
A quick question for you then. Why, you said you were planning on selling it and flipping it. Why not try and put a new financing on it or I don't know if you have financing currently, but just to do a cash out refi? Because you with this increase in rents, you increase the value. It is a commercial property, and you should be able to pull out pretty much all the cash you put in and some more to go buy like another one.
Yeah, I thought about that. Two reasons. One, it's a 6 unit, so it's small and it's kind of tough with the management. If it was bigger and you could have more sophisticated management or whatnot with it, that would make it easier. And also, I wouldn't be able to take as much equity out, I don't think, as if I was to sell it. Yeah. There's also a 1910 property. Sorry, I was having a blank there. It's a 1910 property, so I don't know if that's the best property to own long term, right? It still has some kind of deferred maintenance. It's going to need all new windows at some point. There's going to be more leaks. There's going to be, the boiler probably needs replacing in the next 5 years. All this stuff that I don't want to own and have the problems is where I can sell on 1031 into a much newer property, much larger units, have, better, 30, 40 maybe units, have better quality property management, not the quality, but sophistication of the level of property management. So that's why it makes more sense for me to.
That makes sense. And why Cincinnati?
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Yeah.
Because it's the hottest market in the US, right? No? Okay. Yeah, no, what happened was I was looking in Vegas, and I was looking for a while in Vegas for multifamily, but prices in Vegas, and this was 2 or 3 years ago now, were crazy. They were painful at that time, right? You were lucky if you were going to get like a 6 to 7% cash on cash. And, you can make anything work in any market, right? You can, for sure. I'm not saying that you can buy in California and make that work, right? I'm not using that as too much of an excuse. But I knew with multifamily, with increasing the rents, lowering expenses, forcing that appreciation, if I can have a market that's pretty stable, if the market kind of goes like this, well, if I'm able to do this with the NOI, I'm in control. But if, Vegas is a boom or bust town, right? It really is a boom or, when it's booming, it's great. Last few years, we've been the second highest in the country for year-over-year rent growth, and I think appreciation as well. We've been right up there. It's crazy. When it's booming, it's phenomenal. But on the other side of that coin, and I think this might be happening pretty soon around here, is when it goes down, right? We're so heavily focused on tourism here. It's I think 27% of the jobs here are leisure and tourism and gaming related, right?
What is it? 27%?
Yeah.
That's way less than I thought it would be.
Oh, really?
That's funny?
Directly. Someone said directly related, but indirectly. So those jobs that we're not talking about. Yeah, no, people that don't work at the blackjack or work at the bars or whatever, they maybe work in accounting, but they work for these companies or whatever. It's like 40%. It's like 40%. So
that's huge. That's huge. Either way, it's a big number. 27 is a big number. In any town,
So I was looking. So I have Joe Phillips is my real estate coach. I had Joe as my coach, and I told him this scenario, and that's what I was looking at. And Joe lives in Cincinnati. I think he's bought one deal in Cincinnati, and he now lives focuses on Texas and Florida, I think, mainly. But he's like, hey, why didn't you check out Cincinnati? I live here, but I know it's a pretty stable market. It's a good market. So I started looking into it. Doesn't have the most job growth in the world, but it has good job diversity. Has pretty solid rental base there. A lot of people rent there. So I decided to fly out. Liked the city. Thought the city is a cool city. Had something cool about it. Enjoyed it. Maybe it was that small kid in me seeing the bright lights and kind of big buildings and all that kind of stuff. And the more I kind of looked at deals there and stuff, it just made sense to me at the time. So my wife is also a flight attendant. She's also a real estate agent, but a flight attendant. So I was able to fly for free. So that kind of took that equation out of it. Now, one thing I would go back on, and if anyone's looking to invest out of state, find somewhere you can get a direct flight, because flying to Atlanta every single time, or flying to Minneapolis and Paul and then going there can be a big pain in the backside. So that's one thing I would have changed. But I still really like the Cincinnati market. They have 7 of the Fortune 500 companies there. There's a lot of stuff kind of happening there, and it's not crazy growth, but it's pretty solid there. And it really is it's landlord friendly as well. So there's a lot of good stuff there.
You've given me, there's so much. So let's just start with this. First of all, love Joe. Joe's a great supporter of ours. He's been, from the beginning, one of our early contacts, and he's been excellent. He's been amazing for us. So say hi to him for both of us, if you wouldn't mind. I want to talk about coaching, and then are you comfortable? I'll just be curious, and there's a question in the group here about it, but can we deep dive the 6 unit a little bit as far as financing? Are you comfortable with that? I don't want to put you on the spot.
Whatever. Yeah, no, whatever you want to ask me. Yeah.
Let's talk about coaching for a second, if you don't mind. So Joe, it doesn't have to be a long-winded thing, but why hire Joe? Give us some sense of that. Because real quick, I've talked to some people recently about the successful people I know. One of the keys they have is, it seems like, they all have a coach. And I said this yesterday on another broadcast, a couple guys were on, that Michael Jordan can't see his shot, right? Michael Jordan, the greatest ever, has a coach, because he can't see if his elbow's flaring or if he's not releasing at the top of his jump or whatever the case may be. So I definitely get the value of coaching, but what made you do that, and what value have you gotten from it?
Yeah, there was a few things. For one, was knowing that I think I understood that I didn't know. I was scared of myself, and scared, like I said, I've got a lot of good skills, but I wasn't excelled at school. I wasn't, the smartest kid or anything like that. And I have other skills that make up for that. But I understood that once I started really looking into real estate and to multifamily, and understanding the complexities and sophistication that kind of go into it, right, to some extent. From someone who doesn't really have I know I bought 3 single family properties, but, I was lucky with them and everything worked out with that, right? But I knew that there was a lot that could go wrong. And I knew that I was having trouble learning it and understanding it. And I wanted someone that could handhold me a little bit, and, that could walk me through the process, and I could ask them questions and talk to them about the deal. And I think that's what it was for me. It was that, I guess it was self-doubt to some extent. And I think it was sort of well-founded to some extent, but I knew that I wanted to do it, and I knew that I was going to find a way to do it. I think that's kind of what I started looking around for coaches. And the reason I hired Joe before anyone else with it was a few things. One, with Joe, you get a direct call whenever you want. So he has a calendar thing, a booking schedule, that as long as he's free at that time, you can book a call a day almost. There's no restriction. Now, if you book a call a day for 3 weeks straight and you don't get any value, you don't have any questions, well, I'm sure after a while he's going to say, hey, come on, man. But sure. That you have that availability, that direct line. With other coaches I looked at, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, it's just what I wanted, is you don't get direct access to them so much. I don't know if any at all. Some other ones I looked at, you got like a 2-hour group phone call a month or something like that. And I was like, okay, I know that I need that one-on-one. I think it was understanding myself, right? Understanding that I needed someone. So I needed that one-on-one. Plus, I like Joe as a person. And for me, it's important to vibe with people. You know what I mean? I don't want... Yeah. I didn't want a guru type person, and people that, there's different personalities, right? Joe's personality was kind of similar to mine, a genuine, down-to-earth, honest guy. For some reason, it mattered to me. I wanted him to care, and he seemed to care about the people that he worked with, and I thought he would care about me. All this stuff, right? More than what he taught and stuff like that. That was kind of the stuff that was important to me when I was looking for that coach. And also I knew that despite being a wrestler and despite all doing this stuff, I didn't have unlimited funds, right? I had a little bit of a war chest to go with, but I didn't have unlimited funds, and I knew that at some point I would have to raise money if I wanted to kind of keep scaling up. And obviously, Joe, that's one of his skills.
Very much so. Yeah, he does all right. He does all right.
Yeah.
There's a couple things in there. One, I just think it's great that you hired a coach. I read this book recently, recommendation for anybody. It's very easy, and I love the author. His name is Ben Hardy, Dr. Ben Hardy. It's called Who Not How. So it's a brand new book. He wrote it with Dan Sullivan, who was like Tony Robbins' coach. Like he has a strategic coach platform. Some people may or may not have heard of him, but he wrote the book called Who Not How, because his and the gist of it essentially is, look, when you've got that thing you want to accomplish, a lot of people say, okay, how am I going to do this? When the question you should be asking yourself is, who do I need to get in touch with for this? And that's what I think you're doing really, really effectively with Joe. And it sounds like you mentioned, like, yeah, underwriting may not be my thing, and you'll find somebody, find partners that will do that stuff that fills in your weaknesses or maybe your lack of passion. So I think the who not how piece of hiring a coach is brilliant. The second thing, going back to earlier, I found it interesting, and then I want to get into the 6 unit. Your initial start is so similar to mine in that I was an accidental landlord. I bought a property for $142,000 in New York, upstate New York, moved to Boston, couldn't sell the house. So I kept it. And initially I was renting it, and it was making a pretty penny, because at that time, New York was just ramping up with fracking, hydraulic fracturing for natural gas. But then they outlawed it, and the rent went down, and I was losing about $200 a month, overall. Sold it recently. I owned it for 10 years I bought it for $142. I sold it for $99,000, right? Now, my mortgage was only like 95 or something like that, or 90. So I ended up taking 2,000 at the closing table. So like you said, like, I don't feel like I lost money. I mean, I obviously lost on the deal, but what an experience and what a learning. And I think it's great that you have that attitude around that property, because it could have been looked at as like, screw this real estate thing. Like, it's all hype. It's garbage. Like, I got suckered over here and I'm not ever going to touch that again. But you looked at it as the best school. The cost, whatever it was to you, was the best tuition you ever paid. So very, very cool. 6 unit. Let's dive into that. So 300,000, we learned how you found it. Talk to us about how you funded it, closed it. Just give us some details on it.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy, really. So obviously I'm in Las Vegas, living in Las Vegas, Cincinnati it's a 2-flight away. It's a 4-hour flight to Atlanta, and then an hour and a half from there, 2 hours, whatever it is from there. So it's not easy to get to, right? It's not, you can get to. So I built this relationship. I think what it was, I built this relationship, and I had somewhat of a trust with this broker, right? You can't fully trust any broker, and I mean that respectfully, right? No. Their job is to sell real estate, right? Their job is not. They can present you the deal. Their job is to handhold me everyone. If they show me a deal and they think it's kind of a good one, and then it's not. It's all on me. I've got to do my own underwriting. I've got to do all my own due diligence, right? So I kind of had that. So he's like, "This is a good deal. I think down the street, this is blah blah blah." Sent me the pictures of it. I could see that it was rough, that it needed work. But I submitted an offer, and I was like, okay, let's just submit an offer. Let's get it, control, right? You want to control it first and then kind of go from there, right? And I'm not advocating that people make a bunch of offers and get a bunch of property under contract and then pull out of all of them. But, this deal really seem to make sense. So, so I got it under contract. What was the question?
Decomp it. So 300,000. How did you fund it? How did you fund it?
Yeah. So funding was, funding can be an issue to some extent, right, with multifamily, especially for someone who doesn't have multifamily experience, who is out of state. So I called around. I got some, probably had 4 or 5 different recommendations. Called around a few different ones. Ended up at US Bank. And the good thing about the US Bank is why this was favorable was that US Bank, if they have a bank where you live, they count that as a footprint. So most local credit unions or whatever, but local banks, they need you to have a property or live there yourself. Yeah. But with US Bank, because they had branches here in Las Vegas, that could count as that, having that footprint in that area. So because of that was favorable, because it can be challenging, right, to finance. So then I met with so the guy in Cincinnati put me in touch with the guy in Las Vegas. Ended up meeting him, going out for lunch, meeting him in person, and all that stuff, and created that rapport. So that helped as well. And then I can't remember what my interest rate was. It was about 4.4, which looking now is terrible.
It's crazy, right? Yeah.
If it's not in the 2s, it's terrible right now, right? Yeah. But it was, it's a 4.4 interest rate. And the beautiful thing is I could have got a 4.1, but at 4.4, there was no prepayment penalty. So do you want a 4.1 with a prepay, or do you want a 4.4 with no prepay? Okay, let me think about that for about half a second. So I got that financing. They gave me 80% LTV. Wow. No IO or anything like that, just straight up financing. And it was pretty easy for the most part, except, so this was in November. So we put it in the contract in November. We were trying to close by the end of the year. I wanted to close by the end of the year so I could use those write-offs for that tax year. But what happened was my fault, but also it was kind of messed up on the lenders. It kind of made a mess up on the lenders, was that I was late filing my taxes. I filed for an extension, and then we ended up having to do it through the paperwork. So rather than the e-filing, because it was late or whatever, so I had to do it through paperwork. So they had trouble getting those. They needed to request those from the IRS. They didn't get in time, so we ended up closing in January, and I nearly lost the deal a few times because the buyer's like, oh my God, is this guy going to close? What's going on? Every week the lender kept saying, hey, next week we'll close, next week we'll close, next week we'll close. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to lose this deal. And at this point, I'm like, when you think you're going to lose something, you fall in love with it even more, right? When you think they're going to take it away, right? You want what you can't have. So I'm like, oh my God, I love this deal. I have a deal there, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, eventually we ended up closing a day after my birthday on January 14th. So I was over the moon with that. So, and it worked out well that I worked with this guy, because he's a higher up guy in US Bank in Vegas. He's not just a loan officer, he's a higher up. So there wasn't many fees involved. So I paid like $2,000 in closing costs.
Wow.
So I put 60 grand down, and total I had to come out of pocket was like 62.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
so
crazy.
yeah.
That's
on
amazing.
a 300 grand. Yeah. So it kind of worked out in some ways. Yeah. And he actually bought me lunch a few times as well. So that kind of worked out.
There you go. Chunk it off the 62 a little bit, right? It's more like 61.5.
Yeah.
But it's funny you say about the interest rate at 4% plus. Our first was what, 6% 2 years ago? Terrible financing, 6%, 20-year amortization. I mean, just got absolutely pillaged by it. In fact, we refied for $300,000 more in debt, and our payment went down $400 because of the interest rate and the amortization on that. So it is crazy how the markets are. But to your point, now's the time to buy, and meaning, the debt is so cheap. And I wanted to kind of get into that and then have a bit of a lightning round thing. If you don't mind, we'll kind of bring it back to some of your background. I'm curious about a couple of things, but what is you talked about 100,000 is your passive income goal. It sounds like that you want to get to, whether that's 40 doors, single family, or whatever the case may be. What's 3 years from now? What does Barri Griffiths' real estate portfolio look like? What's the vision that you have for yourself in, say, let's 3 years, or you can change that if you want, if you have a 1 year or 5 year or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have trouble with this one, and people have asked me this quite often, is that I have a goal. I can see what my life looks like, but it's not specific enough. And I think I need to go back and definitely write that, because the more specific it is, and the clearer it is, right, the easier it is there, right? So for one, it's to keep building my portfolio, my own personal portfolio. So I have this 6 unit now that hopefully I can turn into 30 or 40 units, because if I can walk away with, say, 400 grand on that and leverage it up 80% again, right? I'm not scared of leverage done right, but I can buy a $2 million property, right? And that can get you 40, 50 units. So now I've took on a 6 units to go into 40, 50 units. So that's one thing. Then I have some, I'm looking at also to buy 20 to 50 units. And I was in a best, and I can say this, it was a best and final yesterday on 54 units in Cincinnati as well. So hopefully, I don't know if I'll have an email by this, but maybe by tomorrow I'll find out about that. I don't know if I'm going to get it. I think I'm a little too low, but I think hopefully I have some credibility, because I have I built some credibility with a broker, and I have some contacts in the area and some other stuff as well. So we'll see with that. So, I can see myself buying that as well, and kind of just, so then I've gone from 6 units to, say I get that, and then I'm to 54 units plus another maybe 40. So I'm getting close to that 100 units mark, and if you take $100 per unit as, what you expect, then this will be way more. Hopefully this 54 units will be way more than $100 a unit. So, I'm not too far off that goal then at that point, but also, I think the thing is, I think I hear a lot of people, and I don't know if this will apply to me. It'll be interesting once it happens. Once you reach a goal, you don't just stop there, right? Okay, I've reached my goal, I'm done. Let me just sail off to the sunset, right? You usually have something else, because that's human nature, I think, especially for people who have goals. And, if you don't have goals in life, okay, maybe you're not that person. But if you have goals and you're trying to achieve stuff, you're always going to want more, right? Because like those people that went to the moon, right? They have a tough time coming, because once you've pinnacled, each reached that pinnacle of what you were trying to achieve, you want more, right? You don't just go, okay, I achieved that. Let me sit back, relax, or whatever, right? And I'm sure I will to some degree, but there's always going to be, wanting to do more, I'm sure, to some level. I don't think I'm going back to Joe, right? I always tell Joe, why do you keep doing this, man? You have $1 billion worth of real estate under management, right? Where's next? Like, his goal was to reach $1 billion, and he got there. And I'm like, okay, just chill out, man. Just enjoy it. He's like, no, my goal now is this, and it's a certain type of mindset. And I don't see myself that level, but I can see myself doing some, and because I enjoy it as well. It's fun, right? I get to meet people like you and Ben, and it's enjoyable, to be honest with you. So I can see that, and I'm also flirting with syndication. I've been involved with these guys out of Charlotte. We're actually looking in Las Vegas. That Vegas might be a good market, not now, but if you can kind of time the market, never time the market, but if you can time the market, you can kind of make. Do you lose me? Or are we good?
Yeah, no, I froze up. I think I froze.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Good.
If you can kind of time the market a little bit, somewhere along that bottom in Vegas, because it booms back so much, I think it could be an interesting one. And I don't know if I should say this, but I've been involved with some group of guys that we're looking at a 99 unit in Columbia, South Carolina. Now, I know nothing about that market so much, but I'm relying on other people. And I think, as you mentioned, you can rely on other people to have that information. Yeah. So I'm flirting with all those things, but I don't have in 3 years' time, hopefully, I'll have that freedom to not have to rely on entertainment. That's for sure.
I love a couple things here. One is that, like, you started with I bought a couple single families, 6, and now it's like best and final on 54 in on a 90. Like all this, like, holy crap, is all this stuff.
Yeah, but isn't that crazy how that happens to start off with? You see $1 million max to start off with. I remember I saw a property for $1 million for the first time I looked at it. And it's like, can I buy $1 million?
Yeah.
Think about that now, right? $1 million, 1 and 6 zeros after it. Can I buy that? Who am I to buy that, right? And it's almost like you've got to give yourself permission, right? And that's a whole nother conversation, but it's almost like you got to give yourself permission and have that belief to do it. Now, like, once you surround yourself with successful people and you listen to podcasts and you interview people and you meet people and you're like, $1 million is nothing, right? I'm almost embarrassed. I would be not embarrassed, but it's like you talk to these people that are taking $20 million properties down and you're going to buy $1 million properties. It's almost like you have to scale up because you're surrounded by these people.
Yeah, you have look, and that's what you just said is key to me. Like, I'm a member of different masterminds for that reason. I want to be around guys and gals that are doing things at a bigger level than me. I want to be the parenthetical ugliest house on the block, right? I want to be the guy at the low end looking up at all these other people and just hearing their language and their discussion around 20, 40, $50 million. Like, it's nothing. To your point, like, Ben and I refinanced a $1 million+ property. Like, okay, $1 million. In fact, we were disappointed, right? Like, it's worth more than that. We're talking about $1 million, like something I would have never thought was even in play for us. So it's incredible. Can I just make 3? I have 3 things I jotted down, kind of various things from what you talked about. One is you talked about goals. Once you achieve it, having one lined up after that. And we did an interview with Rod Cleve, who many know. And that was a point he made, how he achieved this vision that he had of this beautiful house. And he's laying in this pool, looking up at this like gorgeous home. And he's full on depressed. And his lesson was that he achieved what he wanted to achieve. And he had nothing beyond that. He had nothing to go for, like the guy that goes to the moon, the astronaut going to the moon. So I think that's great advice. Like, you got to have the next goal teed up. You got to be ready with that next goal. I think that's so smart. The second was that you talked about vision. Like, I don't have a specific like vision. Maybe I need to get more specific. And I struggle with that. I don't know if you do, or if I do, or anybody does, because what you're talking about is you want financial freedom and you have a vision of what your life looks like. And that's probably enough, because what I think you want to avoid is, it's got to be this many units in this city or whatever. And when you do this, like, this opportunity is like over here and you're just not able to see it because you've got too tight a vision on things. And you're not saying, oh, wait, okay, that fits with my overall vision of financial freedom. It's never would have thought it would be in Cleveland, for instance, or over the border in Kentucky or whatever. But okay, yeah, that fits. That actually works well for me. And I think that's what you're doing. Columbia, Cincinnati, right in your backyard in Vegas, potentially, as maybe cap rates expand a little bit. So interesting point that I wanted to double down on. I don't know.
And I think to that point as well is that, yes, it's good to have a goal, but your goals are going to change. My goals have changed so much, probably in the last 6 months, right? You know how you have goals, and I used to write them down all the time, and I think that works for some people, and it's not a be end all for everyone. But I think your goals are going to change so much anyway. If you just have a vision, again, I have a vision, and you know, I couldn't bring it down, but I have an idea of what I want to achieve and what I want my life to look like, and I think that's key because that's driving me forward, right? That's, you know, on bad days that, you know, I'm like, okay, what is this costing me if I'm on my phone too long, or if I'm not taking action? What is this costing me now? It's costing me time with my son. It's costing me the enjoyment of traveling or whatever I see with my life, right? And I think that's more important, to have that vision to something. And you can have goals and write it down. That's perfect. But for me, like you said, like I probably wouldn't have opened myself up to all this other stuff if it wasn't for that. Now you've got to be somewhat focused, right? You can't be like, oh, let me do this, let me do that, blah, blah, blah. But you know, at the same time, like you said, that blinkers, right? The horse blinkers, if you're just looking straight ahead at blah, 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 it can work, but you could be missing out on all this around. So I think it's a balance, I think.
Yeah, Jason Sousa put Great Vivid Vision is a great book, and it's funny, Jason, I'm in that right now because one of the accountability pods that I'm in and I are that's what our mission is right now. Like we want to establish our 3-year vision going into 2021, and it is. It's halfway. It's a quick book too to read, and it's got some great points in there. All right, we are at the top of the hour, a little bit after. Actually, I don't want to overuse the time you have for us, Barry. So
no, I'm free. I'm loving this. To be honest, this is a lot of fun.
This is fun. I'm having a great time. So we'll do a little overtime. But let's do this. Let's go into, if I could, I want to kind of shift back. Just your life experience fascinates me. Can I throw out some names of guys that you might have come across? And I'm just kind of curious, like it could be a one word or a sentence or whatever, an impression or something you admire about them, or maybe how they influenced you to this point in your life. So I'm going to throw the first guy out because I think he was the first night that you went to the WWE, and that's John Cena.
Yeah.
So John Cena,
Okay.
what I don't know, did you get to know him? Any impression of him? Any thoughts or things you learned by watching or being around him?
Yeah, drive and hard work. Simple as that. He was, he worked like crazy, you know, and it was one thing to work in the gym, but as he was the face of the company, and you tell me from if you want just one word or whatever. But
no, however you want to do it.
Okay,
however you want to do it.
He was the face. He was the face of the company. So he would. So yes, he would wrestle Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. But in between that and after that, in between going back the next week, we're in a different city every day as well. He's doing media appearances. He's doing Make-A-Wish appearances. He's talking to, all kinds of people, radio stations, TV shows. He's doing all this stuff, and it's nonstop. And yes, he's making millions of dollars. Awesome. But at some point, where does, you've still got to have that drive, and you still got to have that motivation, you still got to have that work ethic. And, he was strong as a ball, right? Really strong. And he would always work out every single day, no matter what, he would work out, right? And that definitely always struck me about him, that he had that drive, determination, and extreme work ethic.
How about the Undertaker?
I wasn't around him so much, but he really cool guy, very very helpful, very respectful of everyone. From what little exchanges I had with him, and just someone that you respected, just someone that you looked up to, not just physically, because he's much taught, he's like 6'10" or something like that, but in terms of the way he conducted himself and held himself. I always remember there was, I don't want to say an aura, but because he was very approachable and very cool like that, but he almost commanded respect, and not because he was, I'm going to kill you if you don't do this or whatever. Just the way he was, his aura. I always remember that about him. And
he did a great interview on Ed Milet's show. I forget his name. Barry? No, your name's Barry. I forget his real name. But Mark. That's right. He did a great interview on Ed Milet's show, and he talked about that, how he was sort of the player coach. Like he would be the one to go to the McMahons and whatever, but he was also representing the locker room, almost like the union steward in some ways. It was fascinating. Just a couple more. What about Vince McMahon?
He had an aura. He had an aura for sure. There was a few things that, he would walk into a room and you knew it for sure. Like he walked around and he just kind of commanded that respect in a different way to Undertaker. He kind of, not that you were scared of him, but he definitely, like, he's the boss, and he has all this power, But also something else that I really respected, and it just shows you what kind of a person he was. I remember one day and it was just new on the road and blah, blah, blah. And maybe I'd been on TV, but I can't remember, but I was still fairly new. I was walking around and I happened to pass him and I said, "Hey, Vince, good to see you." He said, "Hey, Barry, how are you doing?" And you think, okay, what is so impressive of that? We all have stage names. Barry's not my stage name. Mason Ryan. Okay, I expected him to know Mason Ryan, but he knew, and that's how well he knew his company, and that's what it struck. That's what I got from that. He knew his company. He knew his company that well that he don't. How many wrestlers does he have under his books?
Dozens.
I was a new guy. I wasn't a big star. I wasn't, that was only my maybe second time meeting him or something like that. But he knew my name was Barry, not Mason Ryan or whatever it was. He knew my first name was Barry, and that's how well he knew the company. And I think that's a reflection of how well he runs that company. He's a workaholic. There's no doubt. He's a maniac when it comes to that, right? He's just nonstop, and that's the reason he's had all that success. But that always really struck me. On top of the fact that he definitely had an aura about him.
Sure. And then I don't know if you ever ran across this guy in the time that you were there. I know he was in and out, but we talked about him already. But what about Dwayne Johnson, The Rock?
I met him kind of a couple of times. Super nice guy. Like the way you see him interact with people, that's him. That's not some people. That's an act, right? Famous people, they just, oh, hey, how you doing? And once the cameras and nobody's there, they act like an a-hole or whatever, right? He was just super nice. I remember, and just a quick story again about just to reflect how he was. I remember going. So there was this elevator. I can't remember what building or where we were, but there was these elevators, and they were like back elevators, and I think they went up to where the arena area or whatever was like that. And I pressed the button, and who opens the door? But the thing opens, but it's Rock and his entourage and stuff like that. And he's kind of tight, so I was like, never mind, I'll catch the next one. Not that I was shy or really too starstruck, but maybe a little bit. But I was like, it's The Rock. He's big time, whatever. I'll just let him do his thing. And he's like, no, man, come in, squeeze in. He's like moved everyone back and like made room for me. It's like, hey, I only went up one floor. He's like, hey, you good? Blah blah blah. And he could have been like, okay, no problem. But he wants me to come in. Like he's always been like that. And I remember one time when he came back, we were involved in the semi-main event, and I was involved with a group of guys, and we were just like always around this like that semi-main event type thing. And we came back. This was the first time he came back, and he was like in a year or two or whatever. He's getting ready to go out for the main event Raw to do his promo. And I come back through the curtain, and you go to an area called Gorilla. It's called the Gorilla area. It's after a famous wrestler called Gorilla Monsoon. It's the area. It's called Gorilla after him. So I come back, and I'm like, we're talking, like we're just like blah blah blah. And we get behind the curtain, and we're like, it's The Rock there. It just kind of stops you for a second, and he's like doing all this stuff, getting ready because he's getting in the vibe, and he's like, hey guys, hey, like give us all a high five. Yeah, good job, guys, good job. And I was like, man, this guy is cool. Like you can tell he's focused, but this is a big moment for him. Like he's a big star, but still a lot can go wrong, and he hasn't been back for a year or two or whatever. So this is a big time, like for him. But he still had the time to be like, to even have watched what we did and to encourage us and to like give us a high five. He could have just been like, just looked at us and kept, or not even acknowledged us. So I thought that was really cool. And I think that's a reflection of who he is. And I love seeing successful people that are like that, and I truly believe that he's just like that now. I think like if I passed him or whatever, he might even be like, hey, are you a wrestler? He wouldn't remember me. There's no chance in hell he would remember me, but he'd be like, hey, you a wrestler? You work for Vince? And I really believe he would talk to me, and I think he's just, and not just me, any wrestler, right? Because I think he's that guy, that just genuine, honest, humble guy. Because a lot of people that become famous, they're not good people, to be honest with you, and there's a reason they want to be famous, because they weren't happy in their life and blah blah blah, and there's certain things that lead to that, and it leads to success, and because of that they treat people shittily. But sorry, I didn't mean to swear, but
you're good.
They didn't treat people very, very good. But The Rock, I saw him treat everyone awesome. Anytime I was around him, and there's countless stories of him doing that. So I think on top of his work ethic, which is unbelievable. Like, I don't know who works harder, Cena or Rock. To be honest, I maybe lean towards The Rock, to be honest with you, But on top of all that, just humble, genuine, honest, down-to-earth guy, which is phenomenal to know.
What an amazing set of influences then that you had in your career. That's incredible. So my last question, then I want to know where people could find you is, actually, let's do this. Before I do that, I want to tease this last question. Where can people find you? Let people know where they can follow you, find you, all of that stuff. Give them all the platforms.
Well, for one, you can find me Mason Ryan Official, which is my, more of my personal account. But also, I recently started a podcast and a YouTube channel, and I have an Instagram. So the podcast is called the WWRE. It's on iTunes and Spotify and Podbean. So if you guys it's called the WWRE, and I've got a YouTube channel called Wrestling with Real Estate. So that's what the WWRE stands for. It's called Wrestling with Real Estate. I interview people all the time. We've got a phenomenal guest coming, I think next week, is it? One of the best guests I've ever.
Yeah, I think so. Little bald white guy. Yeah. Yeah, he's amazing.
But kind of do what you guys do. Love talking about real estate. Interview anyone from real estate, so I can kind of do that. And it's called Barri WWRE is my Instagram as well. So it's called Barri WWRE. Go there. You guys reach out to me. And if anyone wants to reach out to me and have a conversation. I love talking about a conversation, so I have this thing where I offer people a 30-minute conversation if they want, just to talk real estate. We can talk a little about wrestling if you want, but let's focus on real estate mainly because I love it. I really genuinely love it. So if you go to wrestlingwithrealestate.com, there's a link and there's a sign-up sheet there that you can sign up for a 30-minute call, and we can just get to know each other and see if there's any way whatsoever I can help.
Yeah, Mitch, you put it. It's an amazing podcast name. It really is, and I love even the idea of it, like you versus whoever, right? Like that whole thing. It's great, man. It's a great theme, and I love what you're doing in the real estate space. I love the attention you're bringing to it and the brand that you're building. It's awesome. So my last question is a little bit more wrestling related. I just wanted to ask, what was your most memorable moment in your wrestling career? Because, and I focus on this not because it's like starstruck about, but I look at anybody who's achieved that level of success where you are literally at the pinnacle of the career path that you chose. You're at the very top. 20,000, 30,000 people in an arena that are shouting for you. I can't even imagine, or shouting at you. I don't know if you're a heel or what, but but 20, 30,000 people that are, you have their energy from. I just find it fascinating, and I think there's such a parallel to the greatest real estate investors that I know as well, in that they are focused and they achieve the great things because they take chances and everything. So I'm just curious, and folks can kind of from this story what they want to from as far as their real estate investing career. What was your most memorable reason or memorable moment in the ring in wrestling, and why?
There was quite a few of them, to be honest. It was an amazing ride, and it's strange to think back because it's like I mentioned, it was painful kind of when things kind of came to an end. It was rough, and it's still challenging now, to be honest. There's times I wish it hadn't happened, but it happened for a reason, and everything's worked out for the best. I really believe that, because I'm home every night. I'm with my kid and with my wife. I'm in real estate. All that's probably would never have happened, right? I have a great job with Cirque du Soleil. It's amazing. So it was amazing. And when I talk to you about it, like, I don't talk so much about it. I don't talk to anyone about it and don't think about it so much. So it's crazy. It's like a different person almost. It's so strange to think that I did all that stuff. So I had a lot of cool stuff. It was an amazing ride. Like, just wrestling in a live event, not non-televised event, is just amazing, because the noise, like that, there's not 20,000 people, but there's 10,000 people, and they're way louder, and you can have way more fun because there's no television cameras. And that was just awesome every week to be doing that every week and just having fun in the wrestling ring and traveling to different cities and then traveling the world, going to Brazil, going to Japan, going to South America, going to Europe for 2 weeks, traveling all over Europe for 2 weeks. It was just awesome. But there was probably three main highlights. One was wrestling in Madison Square Garden. That was just so cool to like be in that place, right? To that. Another one was my debut. So to debut on Monday Night Raw on the main event, to interfere in the main event with a guy called CM Punk and John Cena, and they're talking 5 million people plus, maybe more, are watching at that time, and the focus is all on you, right? It's like, because the idea is to introduce you, and because I that was my debut, nobody knew, to have that focus and to go off Monday Night Raw, like I had my arm up like this, and the camera goes to me, and it's just focused on me. It's just crazy. It's just crazy to think about it right now, and at that time, it was just absolutely mind blowing, right? But I think the main highlight for me, more than anything, and there was a lot of them, pay-per-views as well, but the main was being in the Royal Rumble. So the Royal Rumble in 2011 or 2012, 2011, I think. Google it, you'll find out. But in 20, but there was like I said, there was a group of us, and obviously what's going to happen, right, during the Royal Rumble. This is going to happen, blah blah blah. It's just happening, right? It's entertainment, right? It's very real, but it's entertainment, right? I'm not giving anything away here to anyone, I don't think. But but so we knew what was going to happen. So at one point, we knew that a guy called Booker T. For any wrestling fans out there, Booker T. Yeah, he's pretty famous. He was 5-time world heavyweight champion, all this stuff, super popular with the fans. We knew, and he'd been gone for wrestling for a while at that time. But the Royal Rumble has a thing, they usually bring out back favorite people that haven't been around for a bit, because people don't know. And for people who don't know what a Royal Rumble is, every
minute, every 30 seconds, I can't remember. But like people keep coming in, and there's about 30 people in the ring, and you try and throw people out the ring, and whoever's left wins the Royal Rumble, and they get a chance to wrestle at WrestleMania for the World Heavyweight Championship. So big deal. TD Garden, 20,000 people. And we know Booker T is going to come out next. So what happened was we eliminated everyone, and there was just the 4 of us in the ring, and we knew Booker T was going to come, right? So, but you get in there and you're thinking about what you're going to do, and you're doing your stuff, and I've forgotten about Booker T. So we throw the last person out, we take a breather for a second, we kind of look ourselves in character and stuff like that. And then next minute, Booker T's music hits, and 20,000 people go ballistic. I've never heard a noise like that in my life, and I've been to plenty of soccer games, right?
Sure. Yeah.
That noise, just that cacophony of noise, just all in one, because they didn't know he was going to be there. He was massively popular. Just that noise, and he comes out, and he's an experienced pro, right? He's milking that entrance. Right, you're supposed to run down and try and beat everyone, but he's experienced because he knows everyone's going to crazy, and he's looking around. And for anyone who knows Booker T, has these crazy facial expressions, and he knows how to work the crowd, and and we're standing in the ring, and I was able to, because it's cool. Usually you don't have that moment because you go when you're in that ring usually, and you don't really notice the crowd. But we were waiting for him to come to that ring, and we had that chance to look around because you're pretending to be mad, but in reality, I'm just like, wow, this is unbelievable. Yeah. And he comes in the ring, and we do a little thing, and I ended up eliminating him and another guy called Great Khali. So that was pretty moment. But that moment, it wasn't the elimination. It was it was more the fact when he came to that ring, and you just look, and people in the nosebleeds are just going nuts, and they're high-fiving, and beers going everywhere, popcorn, and they're like, kids are just like so happy. It's just unbelievable. Yeah, that moment itself, I think if you ask me about a moment, I think that moment was by far the highlight. I think it was just nuts.
Kudos to you for being present. What I took from all of that is that you enjoyed the benefits of what you were doing, the trappings of your success. You were present in the moment when you're in Brazil or wherever, or in that moment at the TD Garden. I think there's a huge parallel to your real estate investing career. Anybody's, right? Like, things go well, things don't go so well, but being present, being mindful of what just happened, and kind of learning from it, and getting energy from it, and moving on. I think that's a great story. And it's funny, I haven't watched wrestling since I was like 12, but somehow, like, I know all these names. I don't know how. Like, it just permeates society so much that you just know about it. But man, fascinating stories, and I appreciate you indulging me a little bit on some of this stuff. I know today you are a real estate investor. That is your history in wrestling. It's not who you are anymore, but I just think there's so many great parallels to what you're doing now that I figured we should talk through it. So
I think so too, and I'm sure hopefully it's interesting too. But I don't think I'm interesting at all. I really don't. I think I'm very, very boring. If you met me, you'd be bored to tears pretty quickly. But hopefully it's interesting to some people, I hope.
Well, when things open up and we go back to Vegas, my wife and I actually lived right up the street from where you were at the Royal Rumble for a little bit, right down the road from the TD Garden, and we'd go to Vegas a lot back then, and we need to go back soon. So after this opens up, I'll make sure to text you, and we'll grab a drink or something.
I would love it. Yeah. You can come watch my show hopefully as well if we ever open back up.
I've seen it once, and I'd watch it again. It was amazing.
Okay.
It was amazing.
Okay.
Ben, any final thoughts before we sign off for the eve?
Yeah, what tonight finished with such great energy, and it's like obviously Barry is very lucky. That's kind of the highlight of the evening. I mean, look, success leaves clues, so it just hire a coach. That was one of the biggest highlights for me tonight. And the other thing was you don't really need a plan B. You need multiple plan A's. So don't just stick with one goal. Focus on the vision. That was my second takeaway from the conversation with you, Barry. So
you're so humble, Barry. Like, people, I think, you don't allow us to realize, like, you were the NFL player, you were the NBA player. It's the same thing. You reached the height of one of the largest entertainment industries in the world. Like, the wrestling is huge. So those little things that we talk about, and your real estate career is already impressive, and it will become more impressive as you go. Your success leaves clues. Your prior success lets us know that we're catching it at the beginning. And, you're already talking about deals, and that might bring you to 150 units next month. Who knows? Your trajectory is unbelievable. And just listening to a guy like you dissect his life and the success that you've had and everything, so many takeaways. I hope people appreciate from not only the fun stories and like you said, the little anecdotes, but the wisdom that you've kind of given all of us tonight. So truly, man, I really, really appreciate this. Thanks for going long with us as well. And,
no problem, man. Yeah, I can go another hour if you guys want.
No, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I know. I love this stuff. It's so much fun, especially, you know, you guys are awesome and a lot of fun to talk to. It's just cool. So I appreciate you guys having me on, and for everyone listening, I hope you guys have enjoyed as well.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for taking the time, and I'm looking forward to our chat next week. We'll flip hats and do this whole thing. I think it's next week, so we'll figure that out. But my brother, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Ben, good to see you as always.
Likewise.
Everyone, thanks for tuning in tonight. We'll see you all later.
Thanks, Ben.